Hi everybody, it's Erin Scott here. So I'm looking at a picture of Notre Dame in Paris, and we're actually in the process of losing this structure, or it altering dramatically. And this is the current live footage. The spire is gone. A lot of the roof is gone. It's hard to see what else, but there's internal flames here in the towers. The roof structure here is mostly missing. Here's the scaffolding that was up at the top for renovations that they were doing. Anyway, the reason why I'm pulling this up is because I feel a lot of grief around this particular event. And I wanted to pull up the chart. Now, I'm noticing the time. So you can see on my clock it's 4:53 p.m. This is Eastern Time, U.S. Indeed, the fire struck. I just noticed the time, but there is alignment with it because Paris time, the fire apparently began at around 4:50 p.m. So I wanted to point out a couple of things here on the chart. Again, this is for the time, the approximate time. This is pretty accurate for when the fire began. Today, 15th of April 2019. There's a couple things that I want to show you. First of all, the chart for Paris at this particular moment in time was a 14-degree Virgo ascendant, 14-degree Pisces descendant, 9-degree, almost 10-degree Gemini M.Sc, and Mars conjunct the M.Sc. There's a couple other things here too. There's a few things. One is that the sun's location at 25 degrees Aries was located in the 8th house of this particular event's chart. It's alongside Uranus, structural, physical change, and the sun is conjunct Eris, a small planet which is named after the Greek goddess of discord and strife. So the 8th house, for those of you familiar with astrology, is the house of transformation. It's the house associated with Scorpio, ruled by Pluto in the natural zodiac wheel. And it is the house of death, transformation, deep, emotionally held narrative, shadows, that which is hidden, psychological depths, etc. The 8th house certainly is the house of death and rebirth. It is the house of transformation. So the fact that the identity, which is the sun of this particular event, in this case we're talking about this structure of Notre Dame, this identity is in fact located in the house of death, and it's conjunct Uranus. Now Uranus at 2 degrees Taurus. You know, Taurus is physicality. It's an earth sign. It's ruled by Venus, which I also will talk about here. But there's a couple of things about this house that's important. One, that the sun is located in it. Two, that it happens to have Eris and Uranus conjunct this identity point in the 8th house of death. So strife and discord to this identity, indeed. And both of these are located in the sign of Aries. You know, Aries is the self. It is the identity. It is the entity. So, and let's go back to Uranus. So this identity going through some process of rebellion, in a way, that's what's happening here. But there's several things that I want to talk about. One is when this identity is conjunct Uranus, which we all are going through now because the sun naturally is at this 25-degree point Aries, right? So all of us, humanity as a whole, is approaching the sun's conjunction with Uranus. And Eris is next to the sun. This is the case for all of us as individuals. But again, for this particular chart of Paris, France, these are all located in the house of transition. Okay. But now, for the next 7 years, Uranus in this earth sign of Taurus does indicate physical shift and change, structural shift and change. When it comes to the physical body, when it comes to the planet Earth, and when it comes to physical structures. Okay? Now, this is also eruptive change. It can come out of the blue. It can emerge out seemingly out of nowhere. Now, the thing that I want you all to make note of, again, for those interested in understanding the astrological perspective of this event horizon, is that the cusp of this 8th house, there are 12 houses here in the astrological wheel, this 8th house, the cusp of it is in Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is conjunct the M.Sc. In this particular event, Mars, which is fire. It's a fire planet. It's a fire sign. Mars, which rules Aries, is a fire sign, and it's a fiery planet. So Mars, this fire planet, is the god of war, the god of conflict. This is about, literally, this is about fire. If we're talking about any planet that's going to represent fire, Mars is it. And the fact is that Mars is ruling this 8th house here, the 8th house of death. And specifically, too, very importantly, in fact, the first thing that I saw when I pulled up the chart was Mars at the M.Sc. So the fact is that the ruling planet is here at this externalized point of this event. This externalized point, the M.Sc, the medium coli, is the public reputation. It's what the public sees. Okay? When we're talking about Gemini, we're talking about some sort of a communication structure. Indeed, Notre Dame is a Catholic entity. It's a Catholic church. And of course, there's the symbology of this particular event happening right after Palm Sunday, right before Good Friday, right before Easter. This is Easter week. There's a lot of symbology there, and I do want to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it on this video. There's a lot of symbology with this whole event. But I have to say, I find myself grieving heavily about the loss of this particular structure. I visited it. I've been to it. It's a cultural phenom. You know, it's not only the immensity of the structure, but the beauty of the structure. And I have to say, though, there's some interesting things symbolically going on with this particular chart. The other thing that I want to point out before I talk about a couple of the symbols, because there's much here that I could talk about, but I just wanted to point out a couple of the keys, which is this 8th house stellium of physical change and strife in the house of death, and Mars exactly on the M.Sc. Both of those are interesting. The other thing here is the moon in the 12th. What can indicate death and transformation, a transition as it were, is 4th house, 8th house, and 12th house planetary placements. In this particular case, this 2-degree moon in Virgo is located in the 12th house. And the 12th house is essentially, after going through the life in the human journey, the 12th house is about, kind of returning to spirit. It's the returning to the source field. It's also the unconscious realm of the human being. In this particular event, unconsciously, there's some meaning. The moon represents what we're emotionally resonant to, and also what has meaning. So there's some spiritual meaning to this event that is spiritual in nature. And the thing that I want to point out, everybody, is that this particular 2-degree Virgo moon has a particular symbology to it, a Sabian symbol. The Sabian symbol associated with this particular point is 2 guardian angels. Several of the other symbologies for these other placements have been positive in their orientation. None of the symbols that I looked up had anything negative imbued in the symbol. So the interesting thing is, as I find myself grieving this, as I find myself grieving the transmutation of this magnificent structure, something so beautiful and something that represented a place, a portal for some sort of a connection to beyond, something that is 856 years old. This structure, it broke ground in 1163. So from the time that it broke ground to April 15th, 2019, we're talking about 856 years. So there's significance to that. There's history with that. There's culture with that. There's a narrative with that. Does it always evoke necessarily a clean and wholly positive historical narrative? No. But it has meaning for some of us. There's a beauty there. There's all the workmanship that went into this particular structure. I'm hopeful that they're going to be able to maintain portions of this historical structure. But it's happening. Whatever's happening is happening here. Again, this is alive. I'm looking here, it's 5:05. 5:05, you know. Change happening. There's change happening and there's a potential for new change, 5:05. But we're looking at live footage, everybody, here. But the moon, 12th house. Some sort of meaning happening with regards to, you know, some sort of a karmic event, which the 12th house evokes. It rules karmic narrative. In this particular case, there's something of meaning happening that is karmic. And indeed, the symbology is 2 guardian angels, for God's sake, you know. There's something else that's interesting here that I want you to look at. There's 2 things. One is the 14-degree Virgo ascendant. The other is the 9 to 10 degree Gemini M.Sc. So with regards to the, actually I need to go here. With regards to this 9 to 10 degree Gemini publicly seen, publicly recognized facade, literally. This is what is shown to the world, okay? We have an airplane performing a nosedive. Gemini 10 degrees is 9 to 10 degrees. 9 to 10 degrees. An airplane performing a nosedive. This is the final stage of the 14th sequence. The symbol for it has a strong sense of finality. So you can read the whole thing here. You can put this on pause and read this. But keep in mind, this is symbolic. And there's more to say about this. But this is kind of what I wanted to point out. That there's something here about some destruction. If we not even look at anything else that Dane Rudhyar elaborated upon here, from these channeled symbols from 1925, if we ignore the paragraph, and if we're just looking at the symbol itself, feel into that. An airplane performing a nosedive. There's some sort of destructive phenomenon, event, that is implied here. And some sort of a narrative underneath that at a foundational level about mind over matter, or mind versus matter, or mind's impact on matter. But certainly we have this airplane performing a nosedive. which leads to death, which leads to some sort of a transition, right? Which is where we have the stellium in the 8th. So in addition, we have Mars here, right? Mars, which is ruling the 8th house. Mars, which is impacting by fire the facade of this communication entity. Okay? So if we go there, what do we have? We have newly opened lands offer the pioneer new opportunities for experience, the power and joy of new beginnings, everybody. Again, this is not an event that I'm happy about, not even close. However, I will tell you, with the moon, with the imbued symbology of 2 guardian angels, and with Mars actively creating or catalyzing something to open lands for new experience and to exacerbate or catalyze the power and joy of new beginnings. What are we talking about here then? Right? Look at what we're talking about here. There's some seemingly tragic event that is impacting kind of the religious narrative, the church narrative, at least the church and religion as we have known it to be. This is an emblem of Catholicism, you know. Let's take a look quickly, and then I'm going to complete. Let's take a look at this. This is the ascendant for this particular event. So we're going to 14 to 15 degrees Virgo. (14 to 15). So this is what I wanted to show you, everybody. So this is the symbology for the ascendant point, which is creating this chart. It's the time, essentially, of the beginning of the fire. Okay? So we have a fine lace handkerchief, heirloom from valorous ancestors. The quintessence of deeds well done. Okay? Again, you can pause this and read this as you wish, but I want to point you to this area here. First of all, let's look here, the whole paragraph. This is the last stage of the 33rd sequence, 33. And it's the last stage, right? So what did I just read up here? This is also a last stage. The other thing that I'll point out before I finish, this particular symbology, which was this last stage or a final stage, this airplane performing a nosedive, it's also at this 9-degree portal. 9 degree is completion. 9 degree is finality. And you can see that 9 degree M.Sc is opposed to 9 degree internalized root system, this IC point. In Sagittarius, which is belief system. It is religion. So there's some sort of a completion, just inherently with the numerology, everybody. So there's a completion here. There's some sort of spiritual completion. And some sort of a spiritual lesson, by the way. So not only do we have the airplane performing the nosedive, but it's also a final symbol, and it's also a 9. Okay, so we have a lot of final here. Final stage. Here we also have at the ascendant point this last stage of a 33rd sequence. 33. Jesus. There's an association that's just layered here. So you take it as you will. But another last stage. So the last stage of the 33rd sequence, which also ends the 11th scene. The 11th scene. 11 is another master number. Characterization. This scene began with the revelation in a portrait of salient features in a man's face. It ends with symbols which bring out the ultimate validity of the many efforts of generations toward the building of a beautiful and significant culture. The man of culture is, in the deepest and best sense of the term, the aristocrat. He is the flowering of the line of ancestors who have accepted responsibility for a group or community. Likewise, the true disciple is the blossom that crowns a long series of incarnations. We're talking about history here. We're talking about culture here. We're talking about the aristocrat here. There's many layers. But I wanted to point this out because when I first saw the news, which was essentially maybe a couple of hours after it broke, after the fire broke, it was before the spire had fallen, you know, I just felt quite moved by this narrative. And I continue to be. And I was very interested in pulling this up. Now, there's been a lot of events lately. The Julian Assange arrest, Barbara Marx Hubbard's transition, the black hole discovery. This is all in the last handful of days. And I've already done some analysis, some astrology analysis for my members for some of those events, but likely I'll be diving into those and put more of these on the public channel. For now, I'll probably just post this on Facebook. We'll see. But I'm sending you all much love for this particular week. This week, at the end of this week, on Good Friday, on the 19th, we have a full moon. And the full moon is at a 29-degree point. The sun will be at 29-degree Aries. The moon will be at 29-degree Libra. There's a lot to say about that. I've already spoken about it with my members, but it's important to understand that we are moving through a natural process this week. All of us are, where there is some sort of a critical turning point where some loss may be indicated. Here we are Monday, and we're already contending with some sort of major loss during Easter week and during this particular 29-degree portal of necessary transition and up-leveling and maturation. So I send you much love for this week, everybody, and until the next one, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.